This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you love underground music and movies, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed shirts, vinyl, CDs, and more. Go to portlanddistro.com. Plug in the discount code MikeHill666 for 15% off at portlanddistro.com. This week we have Terence Hannum and Erica Burgner-Hannum returning to the podcast. It's been a while and it's great to talk to those guys. Of course, Terence is in Locrian and both of them are in the excellent electronic band Holy Circle. This time around I wanted to talk about their brand new collaboration, Mother of Sighs. There's quite an interesting story behind that, so check it out. How have you guys been doing? It's been a very tumultuous 15 months.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge. I think obviously like none of us have gotten COVID or, and our kids haven't. So I feel, and we have jobs. So it's like, we can't really like, obviously it's just a lot of uncertainty, towards things, and you worry about, even 5 minutes ago about like, for us, like how our kids, we have a kid who can't get vaccinated yet. Just like, moving forward and helping him like, adapt to what it is. So, it's been weird.
Yeah, it's been, when this whole thing started, I thought about a book I read several years ago, Guns, Germs, and Steel, and disease, and how the Europeans wiped out the Native Americans basically with viruses, and the same thing in South America and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is like, there's going to be no shortcut to solving this type of problem.
No, I think it's kind of this. For me, it's sort of this vicious cycle of guilt, because I recognize that, Terence and I have been very lucky in a lot of ways. Like, we've managed to keep our day jobs. We haven't been laid off or lost our jobs like many of our other friends have. We've managed to continue making music because we have our day jobs. Our children, our two kids have been healthy throughout. We've been healthy as far as we know. We haven't caught COVID, and we've, been, safe, but then I feel guilty about that because we have a lot of musician friends who have not been so lucky with, their health. They haven't been able to write music, make music because of the obstacles that this has created. For Terence and I, we have a little home studio set up. So, we're able to just, and, being like each other's like sort of like primary collaborators, we're able to, just go like carve out time easily to write. And I know not everyone has.
If you're in like a band with four individuals who live in different places, it's really challenging. And if your income was touring, if that supplemented your income or was your income, it's been, tough.
Yeah. So it makes me think like, so then I start thinking like, what potentially important music have we missed out on? Will we miss out on that couldn't be made because of the obstacles, to make, what I mean? I feel like we can't even like wrap our heads around, as far as just like music is concerned, we can't even wrap our heads around like what we've lost because of this. I just think a lot about that lately, because you can't, like, I know for myself, it's really difficult to get in a creative space and a creative mindset and write music when, you're worried about how you're going to pay bills or like how you're going to be able to afford to buy food. And if you're afraid to leave your house, because you have like a compromised immune system, or, you're just afraid that, you can't control what's out there, and you can't control getting sick necessarily. I mean, I just think like how difficult this has probably been for a lot of musicians to continue creating because of this.
Yeah, and also the people that are the crew, crew types out there who work as sound guys, drivers, merch people, and that they're the ones who are out on tour most of the year trying to make a living, and now it's like, what do I do now? I get and there's not even jobs to go to. It's not even like, okay, well, I can work like get a job at like a waiter or something like that. That's not even available.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's all like tentative too. It's like, all right, so you get a job and you're, I'm sure there are a lot of like, just like you get that job hoping that you're going to get that message, like we're back on the road, like it's happening. So it's hard to take another job that requires you to do a whole other skill set and, a whole different lifestyle and, and you're also like, you don't want to commit yourself to something because then all of a sudden, what if the road opens back up and you're able to get back out there and and do sound and do lights and it's like we have a lot of friends here in the city, in Baltimore that are run sound and are in bands and just hearing what they've been going through and how they're trying to adapt and it's been tough. I mean, now we're in the period where venues are trying to reopen and shows are kind of coming back and it's this lurching, a show comes back and then the venue closes and then the show gets, it's like we're at this weird space, like, and I can't even imagine, for people that was their livelihood, like it's got to be very distressing.
Yeah, we had we were planning on touring this fall, and we ended up stepping back from that just because of everyone else trying to be out on the road and just all the complexities with how things are going, and also a lot of the dates that we got back were in these kind of B and C markets, which are in these like states that I'm not really ready to visit just yet.
I hear you. I think, man, like putting together a tour. I mean, I get, like we have a show we're probably gonna do in October with the Holy Circle, and we're still kind of like it's a friend putting it on at a venue we trust and everything, but we're just like, we might, it's like you're kind of day by day, like playing it by ear. I mean, and we're in Maryland, which is doing fairly well, but it's. But then you just had like, I think Metro Gallery just kind of hit pause on a bunch of their shows like this week. And that's those like repercussions that affect. So if they do that, then that's how many tours did that affect, and how many bands now have a hole where they were going to be in Baltimore and, it's just like the repercussions kind of spread out. It's a frustrating situation, but I'm sure you got to look at your own health and your band and your team, and like you want to make sure that everybody's gonna be safe and what can you control, right? And that's the thing you got to do, Mike. I mean, we're not quite there yet.
No, we're not, and that was like that was a realization that we all came to, and I think we all feel pretty good about what we decided to do. I mean, we're doing a couple of shows in November though. We're playing with Nuclear Assault and then
I saw that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy, man. And then we're also doing a show
Staten Island with Vulcan, right?
Yes, that one. Oddly enough, that one. This is kind of funny. Like that was the first show that we had to get canceled in 2020. as a result of the pandemic, and now we
Wow.
rescheduled it. So hopefully, all goes well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one-off shows might be might be the only thing to really kind of like plan on for a while. I mean, like because Terrence and I are teachers, we plan if we are going to tour, it's going to happen during the summertime.
Right.
So we've now lost
Second
like
summer.
two summers where we weren't able to do any touring, get out of the area and play shows. So, and I can only imagine if we were individuals whose livelihood depended on that touring, again, like we've been lucky because we have jobs to kind of like get us through financially, but it's like what it does to like your spirit though.
Yeah.
As a creative person is like a whole different whole different conversation.
It's like creatively like playing live, like getting a new song out live and kind of like finding the contours and it's like that thing you miss, like you feel the audience respond and you're like, yeah, that part's a good part, or that part's too, it's like you don't get that like when you're at home kind of like doing stuff. You don't get that immediate response where you have someone who's seen you before come up and be like, well, what was that song or whatever, and you realize like you get that immediate reaction versus like you're just in your basement or you're trading files or whatever, and creating in a digital space. There's nothing wrong with that because I do it all the time, but like with Locrian or the Holy Circle or whatever, it's like being live, you feel it and you realize that there's a cooler, maybe you come back to the practice station, like that part should go longer. Like I feel that that's a good, like the response is great or this part just drags on, and like, like you that happens live, that's like a live thing that it's hard to, you can't replicate that,
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 records that we released that we haven't played pretty much any of those songs live, with the exception of some of the stuff on Monarchy of Shadows was able to be performed because we'd written that like, in 2019 and we were able to play that on those dates. But nothing that is on Under Sullen Skies has actually been performed in front of a real audience. I mean, we did, these live recordings, like these videos. And, there was like a handful of friends present while we were shooting those things, but it was definitely not like an audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just different. It's just different.
Yeah. But it's forced me, and I'm sure everyone else out there, to kind of go into this internal world of the imagination and the mind, which is also kind of a slippery slope and, like of this really, really deep introspective period. And, it seems like, it's funny because, Terrence, like you and I have been talking about collaborating and we had plans to do something for the last Tombs record, but then of course the lockdown and we weren't able to connect. And then I asked you about doing some cues for Necromaniacs, the other podcast.
That's right.
And I think that might have been one of the seeds for this other deep introspection that both of you seem to have gone into with Mother of Sighs.
Yeah, it was. We were. I'm sorry. I was so late. But yeah, you did. You asked me to do some cues for Necromaniacs, and we were talking about horror soundtracks. And I started kind of writing these horror soundtracks, and then I was like playing them for Erica, and I was like, I think it'd be cool to get like I was kind of thinking of like a Fabio Frizzi kind of style thing, and then Erica really just kind of like started having all these ideas and it was started to shape it into something other than like a soundtrack cue. and it took a while. So I apologize for that. But
so that means it's my fault.
it's your
No, no.
That it took so long. Yeah, I don't know. Terrence and I actually for more than a year have been talking about doing, some soundtrack inspired side project, something or another, but we didn't exactly know what it would be. And as a lyricist, I really have to have like strong ideas to kind of like move forward. And but it's kind of one of those things with me that like once I have the idea, then I'm like really, I kind of, plow through, and it's like, I'll have like these like, couple of days where I'm just like writing lyrics like crazy and then like editing and deciding what works and everything. And I kind of just had, I guess just like strong inspiration. It just occurred to me what it could be. And I mean, because it's really, it's really popular right now to, we see a lot of like side projects from musicians that are like, it's, this is a soundtrack to a movie that doesn't exist kind of thing, and I need to know, like my mind doesn't work like that. Like I need to know what the movie is. Like
Right.
as I'm writing the lyrics, I need to like, even if nobody else ever knows what it is, I need to have like a fully realized idea in my head in order to write to it. It can't be anything vague. I need a really strong, like, source to write from. And then it kind of like occurred to me that, like kind of a lot of things that I've experienced and gone through, you know, are like my reality could often be as like terrifying as any like horror, horror concept that we could write around. So that's kind of like where the idea came from. And like, with COVID and being stuck inside for many months, definitely was
the terror level
kind of like a conducive environment to, connecting to these ideas.
On the Death Bomb Bandcamp, there's a very powerful essay that you wrote, and sort of, I guess that's essentially the summary of the subject matter of the Mother of Sighs project. And did that come first, and then the lyrics kind of were drawn from that?
No, well, I mean, it's hard to say. It's kind of like a chicken or the egg kind of thing. I mean, I definitely, those ideas in the essay are what the lyrics are about. But the essay itself, I wrote afterward, and I kind of like wrote it in the 11th hour, sort of like right before we had to have everything to Brian at Death Bomb to make sure things were ready for to go live on Bandcamp Friday. And I actually wasn't sure if I was going to share it. I mean, I sort of was talking it through with parents and thinking like, it's sort of like a twist on liner notes, I guess, was my idea. But I guess I sort of thought too, like, right, that the essay could be, this standalone piece, but like in reading it and then listening to the music, my hope was that it would sort of like make sense to the listener. Oh, okay, this is like the source material for these lyrics, if that makes sense, and for these like for the aesthetics of this particular album.
And there's lyrics, which I mean, I thought, I mean, for Erica in Holy Circle, we don't normally include the lyrics like in other projects. Like, so I thought it was really important in this one to kind of have that statement and to have the lyrics available considering the subject matter. I thought it was a kind of interesting step for Erica to want to include those, and it's a lot of work for her. She edits her lyrics for a long time and comes back and forth and changes things, and I think it's neat to like include the work in there.
I was very, very much affected by the essay. Like I was saying before we started recording, I mean, I read it through a couple times, and it really stuck with me for a while. And I have to say that it's very admirable to be so frank in a piece like that, because I mean, I play around with writing, and I write lyrics and all that. And even though there are personal things that are expressed in the lyrics and the writing pieces, it's always sort of couched within allegory or symbolism or some kind of analogy or something like that. But the essay was very, very vulnerable and frank, and it's very powerful. Just that's what I have to say about it.
I'm glad. Thank you. I mean, this is new. It's new territory for me for sure. I mean, like Terence said, I usually don't even share my lyrics, and that comes from a couple places. One of insecurity, writers tend to be very insecure people.
Sure.
And it's there's this hope that if you don't share the lyrics, maybe the listener will be left unsure of exactly what I'm singing. But it's also because I always sort of felt that I don't owe it to the listener to tell them what to make of what I'm saying. But two, that it sort of robs them of the experience to, interpret as they will. But I think I started like that thinking definitely has shifted with this project. I kind of feel like it's really, like I don't, even though it's like horror and soundtrack, it's still like, it's a serious topic, and it's a heavy topic. It's like I do think that like people don't, speaking of horror films, I don't think that people always take horror films as seriously as other films. And I think like, I kind of wanted to just like make the listener like sort of give them the chance to understand like the weight of this and the importance of this. And I do think that it's really still very, even though obviously people have been talking in current news a lot more about mental health with Simone Biles and there's like Lingua Nota's, writing songs about that, are in that universe of mental, emotional health. I mean, I think it's still like very stigmatized to talk about it openly. And it's something that I've struggled with since childhood. I just didn't have a name for it, and it's
Sure.
like, and definitely like the moment when I became a mother sort of took me to a different plateau, if you will, of, experiences with anxiety and depression. And I think like, that was, sort of, I've had, because of COVID, had a lot of time and therapy to process like what I've been dealing with, and sort of like, ignored or pushed away for many years. And I think like as a writer and a musician and a vocalist who's singing my own lyrics, it was like I felt like I was in a place where I'm ready to like, to grow and push myself. And that felt like a really a really good way to push myself, is to like make my, push myself into some discomfort and make myself do something that I would have never done before, And it feels really vulnerable and scary. I'm still kind of like, oh my God, like, every now and then I'm like, oh,
that's out there.
That's there. People can read that, but I feel like it feels liberating in a way,
Sure.
like, I'm not like hiding it, trying to pretend like it isn't a part of who I am, so yeah. It's
Well,
scary
just
though. It's
a
scary.
couple things about that is like I think just in regards to mental health, I think everyone in this society that we live in right now is struggling on some level with mental health. I just don't think that the human brain and human psyche is adapted to live in the world that we've created for ourselves,
Yeah.
And it's
Agreed.
just
And
spiraling even more the more detached we get and the more reliant on these like social media platforms and all these other things, I think it just creates more
yeah,
and more of a psychosis, a mass psychosis to everyone. And that's why there's so much conflict, I think, right now.
absolutely. And I think, what was really unexpected for me was that because my lyrics are about, you know, anxiety and depression around the, sort of the event of motherhood and becoming a parent. I really didn't, I thought people could, it might resonate with some people. It might, be important for them to see, oh, that's where this is coming from. But I didn't expect so many people to reach out and say that, that, their life is very different from me, but to say that, this resonated with them, that they know how that feels, that they felt that way, that they currently feel that way. It's like I just didn't expect it to resonate in that way with so many people. And and it's like very validating that it was the right decision, to publish that essay, and it was the right decision to publish the lyrics. And it was, and it was scary to like write songs using that as the subject matter. We could have easily avoided it, and there's plenty of terrifying things, in the world with the environment and
Yeah.
the political landscape to write horror lyrics, all day long about. But, I, kind of chose to go inward. And I think that it's very validating. I mean, I don't know if it makes me feel great, like to know that that many people are struggling. I mean, I hope, um, I'm like I've been much more proactive since COVID about my mental health, like seeking therapy, seeking, uh like I do meditation practice, yoga, like acupuncture. I
Sure.
talk
Yeah.
to a counselor. I do all of those things. But again, that brings me back around to like I have the means to do that because, you know, um, and it makes me even more concerned for how many people don't have access to those opportunities to care for their mental, emotional well-being, but I mean, that's a whole
Yeah. I mean, that's like
another spectrum.
another
Yeah.
problem that needs to be fixed, for
Yeah.
Yeah.
sure, But ironically, art and music and writing and all these media does not get the respect it deserves in this country. And in a lot of ways, those outlets are things that help people very profoundly.
Yeah.
But it's oftentimes thought of as like this kind of throwaway. Oh yeah, all right, it's free on the internet and this and that, and I find that sad and very troubling. Because
Yeah.
Especially with music, I think,
yeah,
like it's just there. It's like, I think I was talking with someone yesterday actually about like Spotify and stuff, and it's just like I was like, yeah, like someone played a Locrian song like 2,000 times in one quarter, and I got like 11 cents. you know,
yeah,
and I'm just
totally,
like,
man.
it's like brutal, like, and then like, I think about it, it's just like Spotify and like Amazon Music and all these digital streaming services is kind of set up like it's like a new like it's almost like a different form of like Napster or something like that, where it's just like everything's available at all the time, and then what the artist receives and their worth is not as valued as like a corporation, and their public face or whatever, and it's weird because it's like I feel like people do value music and like think about people want it obviously, but it's like how they invest in it is so detached from its actual value and production. It's just so strange to me.
Well, it also feeds into just an existing problem, I think, with even with ticket prices at shows. It's like
Oh yeah,
I got people will complain, oh, it's $20 to see you play, and I'm like, you're getting.
this isn't a Fugazi concert in 1995, dude.
But then like I would look and I would see like comedians go on tour, and they would have like $80 tickets
Yeah.
to see like one dude up on stage with nothing. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest comedy fan at all. I've only been to like maybe two. I'm not really not into comedy. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I like Lenny Bruce because he's more like this kind of spoken word, like introspective guy, like Bill Hicks, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
I'm like, these guys will charge you $80 to $100 for like one person and maybe like an opener and maybe a local guy. And people gladly fill up these arenas to see these people. Yet you're going to have a band with four bands, a production, and you're complaining about a $20 ticket. And then you're going to spend like $60 at the bar.
How much do you spend going to a movie? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're easily going to spend like $12 to $18 depending on where you're going to see the movie and what time. Like,
and then
you're probably gonna get food. You're probably going to have to pay for parking depending on where you live. At least where we live, you have to pay for parking. It's like and I feel like nobody really questions that, But yeah, I know it's so like just music is just so feels like it's just so consumable and like easy to take for granted and take advantage of. I mean, it's depressing looking at look at like logging on to see like how many plays and like what that ends up like coming up to as far as like what what we would make. And I mean, I guess like my solution for myself, and again, I recognize my privilege in being able to say this, is I'm just going to choose to stop worrying about that so much, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to write. But, you know, I recognize that most musicians don't have that opportunity to say, I'm not going to worry about it because, you know, it's their livelihood. For me, as long as I have a full-time job, it's, you know, I have the opportunity to say that, but it doesn't make it right. It just, it still pisses me
Yeah.
off to like, you
Yeah.
know, to see like how, I mean, and like when, you know,
But you know, like we're also in like a weird cycle too, where it's like, you know, you have a press cycle. So as records come out, you have a certain window where after a few weeks, no one will write about it or review it or do an interview. You know, it's like you have this really weird system in place where the attention span is very short.
Right.
So, you know, like, and it happens all the time. Like, you know, I'm sure we could all name records that like you slept on, you never got around to, you finally put it on. You're like, why did nobody tell me this record was brilliant a year ago? And, you know, like, and then, you know, because you were focused on something else or whatever. I mean, this, you know, this happens. It's human nature. Like our attention, we can only take in so much content, or something turns us off about a record, and finally we hear it and we're like, oh man, that thing's like phenomenal. I think it's like we have this very short attention span. We have a really small, like, you got, think about it now, like from, you know, early 2000s to now, there's so many fewer outlets to even write about or introduce you to new music. Where it's, and there's less writers, and you know, like if you have friends who are music writers, you know that they're in such a pinch anyway. Like they're not getting paid very much. They have a limited amount of content that they can even release if they're, you know, like if they write for a magazine or for a website or whatever.
Oh yeah, trust me, man. Because I used to do a little bit of music writing, and I gave it up because it's like it was just there was no return on it. Like and then you know I was trying to do that stuff for a while, for a few years, and like I was fairly successful at it, but also the amount of effort per return was just not worth doing it anymore, and I just gave up on it.
I think sometimes too, you're in danger when you start writing about music. You're in as a musician, you're in danger of people not taking you as seriously as a musician. You know, it's like people don't like you know, it's like they have a hard time seeing you as a complex individual who does more than one thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's problematic too. And I mean, speaking of live shows before COVID, I think like I really didn't there. I mean, it was almost like there were no live reviews like to like happening anymore. It's like you started to question if music writers were even coming out to shows, you know, or if it was just like, okay, if music happened to land in their lap, that's what they wrote about. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
the effort, yeah.
but like the politics involved and the red tape involved and like, you know, like getting your music in front of music writers is like really daunting. And you know, again, like it makes me wonder like what we don't know, what we'll never hear, what amazing music we might not know about because of the obstacles that keep us, you know, keep us from knowing about it, you know. And I just think that, I mean, it's really problematic with music reviews and with writing about music. It's like, you know, are you writing about this because, you know, it landed in your lap? Did you seek it out? Like, you know, I always question that with I don't know. As a teacher, it's something I have to think about all the time with my students is like, what are the factors that went into the student being successful on this test or this assessment? Like, what were the factors that caused them to not, like, not master this skill? It's like you have to, like, you can't just take it at face value. Like, what, how did this music land in the lap of this music writer? Was it because their record label, like, has,
good PR.
Yeah, most likely that's it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they have money to pay a promoter. And
but I think that's like maybe what makes Bandcamp so interesting is because there are writers there who will feature a band that you've never heard of, that has no backing, they're from like the other side of the planet, and now you're listening to it. And I think that is a neat venue for writers that I'm always kind of interested in, where I think that they tend to have a little more balance between, like, of course they're gonna write. Of course, there's gonna be a feature on this band releasing this record this week, but then right next to it is an article of a band that you would never have heard of if someone there didn't really focus on that band or that scene. And I like that Bandcamp does that, because I've actually found bands that way, just because, like, Mark Masters wrote up a weird experimental tape in his experimental column, or they focus on a tape label out of Africa, and you're like, well, that okay, and you listen to it and you're like, you found something awesome, and I love that about that, like, where I feel that they have the bandwidth to have writers who can be passionate and focus on someone who doesn't have a big, like, label and press release, behind them. I think that's maybe the one exception where I'm like, and I know that I benefited from it too. Like, they featured Axebreaker, they've written up Locrian, like they've always, like, kind of, stuff that, maybe wouldn't, like, be in the mainstream, like, as they, I've had featured there, and I know a lot of our friends have, like, bands that, were small projects or side projects or really difficult sounding, like, experimental stuff, has gotten featured there. And I think that maybe that's one exception. And, I don't know how far that goes, because it's so much music, and, but I feel that I do appreciate it. And and I'll find myself, like, I'll be going there to read an article about a band, or I'll always kind of go through every few weeks. I'll go through, like, what did I miss, and I'll kind of, like, look at different articles and find different musicians, different bands.
But you're a different type of music consumer than most.
Yeah,
is my point. Is my point.
That's fair.
Like, most people don't work that hard to find out about new music. Like, so. I mean, and not to, like, disparage, like, music writers. There are some amazing music writers out there that are doing the hard work of, like, seeking out, like, new and interesting things, or maybe something that they didn't know about before. But I just think, like, it's a problem with, like, the general public, how we have access to music, how we know about new music. I mean, it all comes back to, having the capital to put yourself out there,
Yeah.
Actually, Bandcamp, because I've written for them before, they actually pay pretty well compared to other outlets, believe it or not, for writing.
Yeah, I did a horror soundtrack column for them.
Yeah.
And they compensated very well, and were really, I remember I had a great editing experience too. And, it was a freelancer, but it was, like, a cool idea that they took. It was my idea. I pitched it, and they took it, and I got to focus on some of the horror soundtracks that are actually on Bandcamp, which they're not that many. Like, that are available. There's more now than there were then. Like, it was actually pretty hard to write, because a lot of ones, like, the licensing of horror soundtracks is very tight. So they're not, like the people in charge don't want to release horror soundtracks onto digital because of those licensing payments they get for the physical media with like Death Waltz and
it's understandable.
and Waxwork, and I get it, but it, when I run my radio show, it's just like, man, I gotta go and digitize this LP now, and like it's, you want good quality, and you're trying to find stuff, but it's a little bit better now. I know Waxwork just started their Bandcamp page, and that's exciting to me because it's like I can find some stuff, and if I have to digitize it, even though I like the physical vinyl release, but when you're doing a radio show, it's like that's not going to help me at all.
Yeah, and also when you travel too, Bandcamp has that handy app where you can stream stuff, like when you go out, travel, and do that kind of stuff. I enjoy that for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Before we get too far away from ticket prices, I want to do a preemptive strike out there to some of the trolls who are probably going to bellyache that, Mike's talking about money again, and how it's people complain about paying or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, if you got a problem with what I said about my problem with people complaining about paying $20 to go see Tombs play somewhere, I will take you on tour with us. You can sit next to me in the van. You can sleep in bed with me at the Motel 6 and the Red Roof Inn. You can sleep right next to me.
I mean, I was gonna say that allows you to afford the Red Roof, and we just beg friends, and if it's a city that we're like, hi, we met one time 10 years ago, can we sleep on your floor?
I'll take you to towns you didn't even know that existed.
To
see people that you thought you would never want to meet in your life.
You could eat the Taco Bell next to me and argue with this guy about some random 7-inch I put out 20 years ago.
Totally.
So it'll be awesome.
And I think that and you can do that for 30 days with me every day. You can see my face every single day for 30 days of your life, and then you can tell me that $20 is too much.
$20 is too much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think about it too as music consumers. I think with COVID, a lot of it is I've realized I didn't go to certain shows, and I'm like, man, I'm so mad I didn't go to that show, and it's definitely made me reassess how much I would pay or how much time should I give. And I know that as shows have been coming back, we're much more eager to pull the trigger on a ticket.
Yeah.
We're much more we're going to that show. We're already putting it in the calendar. If it happens or not, that's another story. But yeah, I think people don't. I mean, for us, when we play a show, we have to hire a babysitter. We have 2 kids.
It's expenses.
It costs us. Most shows for Holy Circle cost us money. We don't. We make not enough to even compensate for what we spend on the babysitter, for the kids,
I mean, I playing shows is
not complaining.
Playing shows is one of my most favorite things to do. I mean, it's like my attitude and my outlook about life is so much better when I'm regularly playing live shows. It's even with all the logistics and the money and all that stuff, and all of that aside, I thrive on live performance because I think it's such an important aspect of who I am as a musician, but also how I write songs. We've rewritten entire songs because of the way that we improvise the song live.
Sure.
I mean, their entire songs. There are songs that we've written and recorded in the past for Holy Circle that completely completely changed because of playing them live.
There are songs we played live that we decided weren't good and stopped playing entirely, never recorded, just because we're like,
yeah,
it's not working.
I just think it's so important. It's such an important part of, and I get there are lots of musicians who never play live and never tour, and that's and that's fine too. Like, I'm not like saying that there's anything wrong with that. Just for me, like, it's such an important part of of the songwriting process for me, and just like the experience of performing live, like, like kind of like getting lost in the music, or that feeling when you're like connecting with like the audience, and like it's a really good show, and it's like that feeling of like like elation, really, like that that everything, you're striking all these like chords, not to
Well, I mean, that's also part of just the age-old human experience, like going to the reason why things like live performances exist is because it's part of our experience as hominids. I mean, we have like this atavistic sort of requirement to do things in social groups or communal efforts like that. And I think that tradition has been ritualized and turned into what we experience in the modern world as live performance.
Yeah, and I think, like, as somebody who grew up in a Southern Baptist, very conservative family, went to church like every time the doors were open as a kid growing up. It's like, those were the moments when I felt like, connected, were, when everyone was singing, and, or like I was on stage singing, and, it's like, there's just something about like sharing like music with other human beings in the same space, and like having like this, I mean, to me, it's like it's like you're on a different like emotional plane, when like, and I mean, like, we've played horrible shows. Like, we played shows where like I was like from like the first like chord, I was like, oh, this is off, like this isn't gonna go. And you learn something from that too, and I just, it's just like so important to me. Like, it really does scare me, like what's happening because of COVID, like with venues having difficulty, like, staying open, like people, like I, fear for people coming together and getting sick, and then not wanting to go see live music, being afraid to go see live music. I mean, and like obviously the safety of everybody is like really important, but it's like also really scary to think that, this could cause a lot of that to go away, or to limit opportunities for musicians to play live. I mean,
it's a lot to think about, and there's really no, like, I go over it in my head all the time, but then again, I just kind of like, well, it's going to be what it is. It's going to happen one way or the other, and whatever form it takes is to be seen. It remains to be seen, I guess.
Yeah.
Just get vaccinated and wear masks, and we'll all look like Slipknot or something. Be creative with our masks. We can all wear masks.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually, in New York, it's required for access to restaurants, gyms, and music venues, or any type of public, gathering place, that you have a vaccination card.
We're shifting to that in the Baltimore area. Baltimore City has started to
they're saying mask back on.
require that. I mean, I don't there's some venues that are requiring that you show proof of vaccination, but not, I don't think it's become a city,
Not yet,
citywide.
not Baltimore, but it probably will. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's probably the most sure way that they're going to be able to kind of get things back. And, you know, and you're already seeing the numbers. As more people are mandating the vaccine, you're seeing the vaccination numbers go up, and that's really good. And, you know, I mean, but, you know, it's like we're also in states where it isn't as dire as like Florida or Texas or Mississippi or places like that, you know, or just like,
Yeah.
you know, where it just makes sense, you know.
I just think those states are it's gonna be this inferno of disease until
There you go.
like
That's a song title, Mike.
yeah,
You got it.
inferno of that's gonna be our next album title. But yeah, I just think that it's like those states are just gonna become this inferno until everyone has it or they've reached that 70% herd immunity or whatever. But you know that is a very direct, you know, sort of I don't know what
Darwinism.
Yeah, it's just like this very Darwinist way of reaching that endpoint, you know, instead of maybe saving a few thousand lives, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't make any. It's just, you know, I mean, you know, it's the politics of it are just kind of weird. You know, it's like we're gonna let people die because we don't want to make them wear a mask. It's like, hey, it sucks to wear a mask. It really does.
Well, there
Like,
should be no
go to the
politics.
gym to wear a mask. I mean, like, you know, that sucks. Like, I hate wearing a mask at the gym, but
Yeah.
I did it. I do it. I don't mind it. In the end, it's hard to do cardio. It's hard to do most things, but you know, does it keep me safe and other people safe? And when I get home, I have one kid who can't get vaccinated, keeps them safe. Fine, I'll wear it. It's okay.
Well, there shouldn't be any politics because it's a public health crisis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but that's the thing that kills me. It's like, okay, everyone's against wearing masks. They don't want a social distance. They don't want lockdowns. So the only thing left is what we have right now is to get vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
That's really, literally the
Can't
last
have it.
resort to this whole thing.
You can't have it all the ways.
Yeah.
You can't have it all the ways. You can't have all of it. Like, you can't, like,
It's like, listen, Snowflake, your parents lied to you.
you can't have a normal, you can't have, like, things back to quote unquote normal and not participate in any of the safety measures to keep yourself and those around you safe. And it's like, I just think we're like, as a society, we have such a sense of entitlement that, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, everyone owes us something, and like everything is infringing on like our, you know, our rights and like our, you know, it's like, no, like, such a lack of empathy for, you know, how my actions impact others. And especially, I mean, you know, I'm from Florida, you know, it's like,
Okay.
I'm just like I can't even, like, I can barely go on like social media at this point and like see what like friends and family are like posting. And like, you know, some of them are like we have friends back in Florida who are medical workers, family who are medical workers, and they're like begging their friends and family to get vaccinated, begging them to, like, you know, rethink their like social life and like not engage in, like, you know, going places where there's large crowds. And it's just like, why do we have to say this to people? I mean,
like, my brother-in-law is a nurse on the east coast of Florida, and he just like a 30-year-old healthy person just died in his hospital from COVID. And
Exactly.
it's like, and they're turning their cafeteria into a new COVID ward. Like, it's not over. It is. And I just can't even imagine, like, for him, his mental health after dealing, I mean, like, I know he's, you know, like, if you talk to like EMTs or if you talk to other medical, there's a little bit of like a gallows humor sometimes, like a lot of stuff, you know, especially like ER nurses and stuff have seen a lot. But in the end, they're still like professionals who are people who have their own, you know, like PTSD of things that they've been going through. And just to like, for him to look at this landscape and where he's like, this is a person who should have led a really healthy life and lived, 40, 50 more years. And it's like, he's intubating him and now he's gone. It's like, that's just like, it's just crazy, and that we can't have this moment where, like, yeah, let's take care of it. Like, I know there are people who maybe can't get vaccinated because they're immunocompromised. It's not ready yet. I know they're still working on it, so I get it. But like, but those are the people that are like the most responsible mask wearers and social distancer. It's like they're doing all the other stuff that they can do. It's like, and we owe them some kind of safety too. It's, yeah.
And like the fact that people are using this as some kind of like liberty, like freedom thing. It's like they're like Patrick Henry or something, it's like, this is like, give me liberty or give me death,
yeah, well, you're going to get death.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's not the hill to die on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, and the conspiracy theories and how, fake news, all this bullshit. I'm like,
put the mask on.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Well, the other thing too, it's like, all these people who are talking about, health and freedom of choice with their bodies, I'm like, have they ever, they're the first ones, in my opinion. I like to know what the statistic is. Probably the first ones to tell women they can't have abortions,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, anyone, just thinking about it really quickly, like, everyone that I've seen be very vocal, like friends from growing up, family, who are like, posting these asinine things about like, we should be concerned about like having to carry a card to prove anything and like tell me to wear a mask and like it's my body or whatever. Yeah. They're the same ones that are like, abortion is murder, like,
yeah.
But it's like they don't have a problem with the government telling me as a woman like what I can and can't do with my reproductive, rights, but like, like you can't tell them to wear a mask or show proof of vaccination and go to like Lollapalooza. Are you kidding me? Like, like what a like spoiled brat you are. What a like worthless like you're just sucking up all the good air in the room. Like, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like it's mind boggling. Like they're the same ones that are just like in denial that we have like immigrant children in, camps. You know what I'm saying? Like they're the same ones. Like it's just amazing to me. Like,
and this is more of like a personal thing where it's like, I try not to go on these like YouTube rabbit holes or anything about all this stuff, but every now and then like I'll watch something and I'll see like some pre-diabetic, overweight mid-American person railing about their health and they don't want to take the vaccine. And I'm like, clearly, you don't care about your health. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this situation, filling your body with trans fats and fucking high fructose corn syrup. And those are the things that are going to kill you before this vaccine killed you.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's, so as a PSA, everyone's listening.
Everyone's
we would really
right
prefer you.
They're gone. Those people are gone.
We prefer that you get vaccinated. We'd love to see you at a concert that you can pay more than $5 for.
Yeah.
I mean, my actual message is do whatever you want, but just be aware that you have to pay some kind of consequence for your intention,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. For sure.
That's just more of like a Luciferian sort of, like take on the whole thing,
Do what you're going to do, but you might die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Consequence to everything.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what you chose is also a consequence to the others around you who might not have a say in what you do. Yeah.
Actually, you said something earlier that I thought was interesting about like taking horror seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there are definitely parallels between taking horror films and literature and extreme music that maybe earlier on in the history of those genres, there was a little bit of a lack of seriousness, quote unquote, for lack of a better term. But in the last 30, 40 years, I think that both of those genres, and we can talk specifically about horror, have
Yeah.
very much dealt with some very serious topics. I mean, the essay that you wrote, Erica, I think as I was reading, I was like, man, this would be like an A24 style film, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I, uh, I think like, I have a degree in theater.
Yeah.
And I remember I remember when I was in high school, I went to performing arts high school in Florida, and I played Miss Adelaide in Guys and Dolls.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and this was like one of the, how like you like kind of like as you get older, you kind of like start to realize that there were like these kind of like monumental moments where like a conversation or a realization, and you're like, oh, that's really informed me as like the person that I've become, and I remember a friend of mine saying, like, they said to me, like, what I like about your performance is like, even though this is musical theater, when Adelaide is sad, she's really sad. And, and I was like, thank you. And you're right. I really was trying to make her like a human being, even though she's like a musical theater character, and I think that kind of like always stuck with me. Like, even if like your subject matter is fiction, even if it's, absurd or fantastical, whatever it is, like character work, vocal work, whatever, like, um, that like the human experience, like, like of like sad, like real sadness or real elation, or, you know what I mean? It's like I guess like I've always sort of like use like, my method acting background to like find a way to connect to my topic, even when it's,
But I think like
not something that's like true, and I think like that my favorite horror films are the ones that are about, like your psychosis and like your, they're psychological, and, or about like commentary on like social commentary, like, I think that those are my favorite horror films, because it's like, even though it's horror and there's like these fantastical elements that occur, typically it's like they're grounded in some truth,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for me, like with this project, I had like a few films in mind, like when I was trying to create some cues for you. And like I mean, and like you're saying, like I think that, I mean, I've always been drawn, like, I think when I was younger in like the 80s in the video store rental, you're trying to just get the goriest, movie, home, and hope your parents don't find it, right? But then you find, I think, like, then you maybe get confronted with something that's like I remember when I was young, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was just kind of blown up. It was so gory. It was all out of control. I finally saw it and I was like terrified. And it wasn't that gory,
Yeah, it was just the atmosphere that really was very, very creepy.
Exactly. And I felt like, it was raw in a way, like it was it felt very real, it felt very raw, and that's a soundtrack cue that I played a lot with on Mother of Sighs, was how Toby Hooper and I think his name's Wayne Bell made their soundtrack with things around their editing suite. They would drag a pitchfork across the table or use bones and ice to make the kind of sound cues that stuck. I mean, to this day, like I always think it's this great soundtrack. But as we were doing this project, I thought of the other films that were a little more serious. Like one of my favorite horror films is Repulsion.
Yeah.
And that was like in my head, just that kind of claustrophobia that, and I know I kept kind of thinking of Repulsion a lot with COVID, like that the home becomes this like pressure cooker of all your anxieties. I mean, obviously there's, a lot to be read into that film, but, and Catherine Deneuve and about, being a woman and repression and all this stuff. It's like this really interesting film from a really messed up director. But, I think that, that was one of my cues. And another one was like a really early one that I think was one that could feel really schlocky. Like, I think that's what you're trying to say, right? Is that like, there's that horror that's kind of like, kind of like a joke, like a tongue in cheek, and I've never really related to that. Like I've always, it's like my friends, we always would divide like Return of the Living Dead versus like the Romero trilogy or something where it's like, it's really funny. And I was just like, that's not my thing. I liked it where it was a little bit more serious. And another one was like Carnival of Souls. That was a big influence. I wanted to try and make something similar because I love that soundtrack. It's again one of my favorites, and I love that movie. And I think just the story behind it, and it's a lot like, it's very serious. It's really interesting, and really beautiful and kind of surreal. So those are like the things I kind of tend to. Those are some of my inspirations. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of like Carpenter-isms throughout it. Like I would have a little bit of a drum machine, and then, it was like, well, it's good enough for Assault on Precinct 13, so I'm just gonna keep it really minimal, and some of the synth stuff. But yeah, I think we're in an era where, like the A24, like The Witch or Hereditary, you have these. Or Erica, we were talking about The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Like that's just such a weird, strange horror film. If it is a horror film, it's like,
I know. I think it is.
Yeah.
Disturbing, at least.
Yeah.
The Hereditary is really scary. The Witch, I think really resonates with me because one, I mean, like I have a fear going back to childhood of this sort of like primal like witch like that I was convinced lived in my closet. But I like The Witch because it's like what's really, sort of like believed to be evil is like her sexuality. It's like this young woman in puberty, and she's like she's blossoming as like a sexual like being, and they're like, because they're like these Puritans who are very conservative and like and I think it's like that really resonates with me, like being somebody who grew up in like a very conservative environment, that was like very limiting. And I just really, that movie is just really, and it's so scary. Yeah. I love that movie. Like Hereditary is like, that movie is terrifying. Like it's just like so scary, so good. Yeah.
Or even like the new Suspiria, that was one we wrote. That was a good. That was. I mean,
yeah,
the whole Suspiria.
That's
where our band name came
has a good
from.
soundtrack.
The band name came from, but it's like I go back and forth. Like I love the original Suspiria, but I really like the new Suspiria. I thought it was interesting, And
Yeah,
it's a tough thing to remake, like, what's Suspiria even about? It's about a ballet school for witches. Like, what
yeah.
the heck? What? How is this scary? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely room to like both of those films for sure.
yeah, I agree.
And
Yeah.
The Witch is complicated for me because I have a couple of different ideas about that, and yes, I agree that there is like an empowerment element to it, but there's also it's told through the lens of I guess like a Christian male point of view, where
Mm-hmm.
witchcraft really wasn't about Satan, and yet the movie connects it to this more. I mean, there's like the left-hand path, and then there's Satanism, and they're two different things,
Yeah.
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 and they don't really differentiate that. And if you read anything about, or if you know the stories of what went on in New England, the women who were hanged
Yeah.
were not practicing any kind of like satanic witchcraft. And I kind of wish the film, that's where the film kind of lost me a little bit. I wish that if it had been written where the actual witchcraft was witchcraft, not some trumped up,
Yeah.
puritanical like version of it where they worship Satan and there's like a goat and all this stuff. Or if the goat had actually been utilized as not necessarily a satanic set piece, but as kind of like a stubbornness or a resistance
Yeah.
character, then I probably would have been more. I would have enjoyed the film a lot more.
Yeah. I see your point. I I think it's yeah. I would like to. I would like to see how this story would be different from her perspective.
Yeah.
And I think like soundtrack wise,
Mark
that's
Corbin.
like
Yeah.
there he's using. Didn't he used like a dulcimer and some kind of like
He used period like instruments. Made these drones. I think one was like a hurdy-gurdy, and
yeah.
there's like
That's
I can't remember what they're all called, but there's really cool articles about these period instruments that he used in the soundtrack. That I have it on vinyl. Like, it's a great soundtrack. It's like, pretty amazing, separate from the movie, and yeah, like he definitely pulled together some really cool elements, like with all these organic kind of string drones and instruments and stuff. It's really neat. Yeah.
Yeah, the soundtrack was amazing, man. I mean, the movie is amazing. Like, I'm not. That's just my own personal
yeah,
take
no.
on it. And it's like it's a great film. I really enjoyed it. I agree. Like, if I have more of an objective like point of view on it, I really really liked it. But I'm tired of seeing like witchcraft portrayed that way. You know what I mean? I would rather see it like someone actually do some research and dig deep into it. And
Yeah.
I even think that's the story of that is even more interesting than if you connected it to the elemental forces as opposed to some kind of Judeo-Christian idea about evil and good and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think, and it's probably about I think like you see, and I think, part of what you're saying is also like we, especially in in America, we tend to have this very limited view, kind of shaped by media, of what like Satanism, witchcraft, and paganism, all that kind of lumped together in some ways because of this Judeo-Christian like valuation of them, right, and judgment upon. And it's like when you study any of them, you realize the complexities and the histories within what was considered witchcraft, but was a pagan practice. Like you're even saying, like the hair splitting of Satanism, that it's not as black and white as like there are different elements and practices that evolve in certain ways. So and that there are interesting stories, and I think you see some of that maybe around like the the Viking shows and paganism or whatever, right? Like there's a little bit more of like consideration that's going into that, where it isn't as, through that lens, but those are European shows that are a little more invested in kind of like giving some nuance. And it does make the story more interesting because if you're not exposed to that and don't understand it, it does kind of open your eyes a little bit that things were a little bit more complex and that there's a little bit more value there than perhaps you've been exposed to or told or whatever. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think there could be more there if people would invest in it or even, with specifically New England and witchcraft and doing more with that. I think you're right. But
yeah, there's been a couple of movies out there that have been like skirting around it and really touching on. I'm talking about like that. There's like, was it From the Earth or something like that? That movie that just came out recently. Gaia, which is a little bit more of like a monster movie, but but it's like there's people are touching, they're flirting with the idea of like older ideologies that predate Christianity, and that religion in general might be just an explanation or an attempt to explain some kind of phenomenon that someone experienced, and they connected gods and demons and angels and devils and all that sort of stuff to those types of things. And I find that really interesting, and I'm waiting for someone to really jump into that.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, Mike. I went to college and studied religion. That was like my major.
I do know that. We actually spoke about that.
Yeah, we have. And like that was like the thing that I'm like this is like humanity. It's like this creative situation, that like you've interpreted the world as you see it through this belief system and this value system, and generated this, very complex system. I mean, it's like, and every system is really complex, whether it's, I think like, every religious valuation system is complex and determines people's other worldviews and your rejection of it too. It's like you when you are rejecting something, whether you're agnostic or an atheist or whatever, it's like you're also kind of like finding that way to, and because that system doesn't define the world that you're living in, and that conflict is like way too much. When the system you were brought up in and the system that you've experienced don't mesh anymore, it's an element of existential conflict. So I think it's like rife for great horror movies.
Yeah. I mean, we're afraid of what we can't explain away, I think those are the scariest things that, occur, and like, we don't know how to explain it. So we either define it like within the parameters, that we've set up for ourselves, or we deny it, or, I think growing up, I was always like really intuitive, like I, especially like when it came to like sound and music, like I would, in my head, think of a song or think of a musician, and then, mom would start humming the song, or vice versa. Like I would walk through a room singing and somebody in my family will go, "Hey, I was just thinking about that." And it happens all the time now with the kids, like, especially our son, he'll like, start singing something and I was just thinking about the song, or like, I have that happen pretty frequently where I'll like walk into the store and I was just like thinking about a song and it's on the, like on the sound system in the store or whatever. Like, my mom would always, like, when I would the few times I tried to like explain that to her, you know, she would always dismiss it, you know, like it's just like, you know, it's just a song that we both like or whatever, you know, but that was never like a good enough explanation for me. You know, I knew to me, there was more to it than that, you know, or when like you think about somebody and then they call, you know, they call you or they text you or something like that's not a good enough explanation for me, you know, but I mean, my parents have very rigid parameters that I mean, like ironically, like they believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they like believe in some pretty supernatural things themselves, you know. But that didn't jive with like
But they're the same person.
they're the same person. But they're
The same person. But you said they're three different. But they're the same person. It doesn't make any sense.
yeah.
All right. It seems really unnecessary. It's okay to have three. It's fine. Three is fine. It's monotheism, so we have to make it one. But how can the God have a son who's the God that had the son who then left the spirit who's also a God? Sorry.
Sounds like some shenanigans, man. It sounds like some guy decided that I don't like this story. I'm going to make it the story I want, just so I can control people a little bit more, you know?
It's really clunky. If you go to the doctrine of the Trinity, it's a super clunky theology that really doesn't make much sense. And it's like a lot of these church figures in early Christianity who are just trying to like make it come together in some way, and it's not consistent, you know, at all. Like you have writers who have no idea of the biblical writers and the New Testament and stuff have no idea about this concept, so they don't even write about it. And then you have others who they like essentially are writing about some of this. So it's like a really weird, really clunky, and it's just a really bad argument. I mean, I still remember the arguments when I was in class and we were arguing, trying to be like, this makes no sense. This is like a terrible conversation to have, because it's like you're in this circular argument, you know, and it goes nowhere, you know, because it's like the church is like, it has to be this way. And you're like, so then you have three gods. No, not three. The three gods are the same God. Impossible. That God made another version of himself but that's the same God. So God said himself. No, God was God. This is like you're just cycling through this ridiculousness. But I kind of like that. I like the argument of it. I like arguing about it, but it's a weird one. Sorry.
It's fine, man.
It'd be a great, to me, it's like this premise of a really interesting horror story. I should probably write it, but it's a weird one. I think we can cut this whole part.
No, I this is the kind of stuff I like, man. You know, I think this is cool.
But I will say, so there were heretical Christians in like the 2nd century who believed that Jesus was only an apparition and was not a physical person. And they wrote gospels that were destroyed, and we have fragments that have survived, where Jesus is just an appearance and not a physical manifestation. And those are the people that I'm the most interested in from all my study in religion, like the people that were like, Jesus was a ghost who came here. It's like, that's awesome. That's really cool. But there's this really bad reconciliation amongst all these disparate groups and communities, and it becomes this clunky doctrine that's like this, like kind of like a junkyard, you know, like assembly or something. It's really weird.
That's when it gets really laughable to me, this whole thing, because it's almost like these dudes who are like getting together playing D&D, and it's like, okay, how are we going to explain that the dragon destroyed the city of Sinosier, and then it reappears later? You know, it's kind of like that's what it reminds me of. Like whenever, because I mean, I don't have nearly the background you do in religion, but it's something I enjoy reading about. And I run into all these inconsistencies, and I'm just like, this is basically like guys hanging out on a Tuesday night at the comic shop after hours, doing these like pick your adventure stories, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, and I always look at it, you know, any book that has to have like 4 tales of the same story and they're all different, like it's asking you to interpret between them, you know? Like, so when people want to treat it like, oh, it's this monolithic, you're like, no, you told me the same story 4 times in a row and they're all different. I'm sorry, this is not really well put together, you know? Like, and they all serve different means and different ends, but it's like, and then you have essentially like the rest of the writings are like a guy who never read the entire first 4 books you had me read. Like he had no knowledge of them, right? And half those stories aren't even important to him as he's writing these letters, right? So it's fascinating to me, like that in your hands you have this blueprint that's like all about like interpretation and reflection, and they don't line up at all. And it is inconsistent because it was kind of like cobbled together like a mixtape, you know, of like different stories. Like, and in some ways, I think that makes it more interesting when I explain it that way.
Yeah, no, totally.
But I also know if I were to say that amongst a lot of other believers, they would think I was crazy and argue with me the entire time. But it's like I know the histories and is on my side about how this thing was essentially cobbled together through a bunch of men arguing about it, you know, and being like, well, you're a heretic and you're excommunicated. You know, it's like this craziness that happens in the early church as they're trying to like make a document that they didn't really do their job. They were really bad at it in a way, like, you know, and you see like changes that happen and stuff like over time, like, you know, it's a weird one, you know. I don't know. I like it, but I'm probably in the minority. No one else is saying that.
I like it too, but I like it in the way that I like how people have taken Robert Chambers and H.P. Lovecraft's original mythos and added and expanded on those ideas too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's like Carl Edward Wagner and all these guys who have like continued to expand on like the Cthulhu mythos and the Yellow King and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's like maybe better than the source in some ways.
Probably.
So,
Yeah.
So now as far as where people can pick up all this various music and Mother of Sighs and all that stuff, where is the place that everyone can go and purchase the material that you guys have done?
So the Mother of Sighs digital was released by Death Bomb Art, so on their Bandcamp, and we're doing a very limited physical cassette release with a book with Erica's essay, and that'll be available through our private label, Anathemata Editions, and those are the places you can get it.
That's awesome, man. And when is the physical going to be available?
It'll be it's in production right now, so we're hoping in September we'll have it in hand. So we're you know, tapes haven't been too backed up. Vinyl, it's just like you're not seeing that for over a year, you know. But with cassettes, those are moving pretty quick. So and I like cassettes, and on Anathemata Editions, I normally do like lathes or cassettes. So lathes are super quick. I have a really great guy who cuts all the lathe records. We just did one for this hardcore band called Silk Leash. I did an Axebreaker 10-inch recently. And now we're going to do the Mother of Sighs cassette edition. That was like a week ago. I think we got everything finalized and stuff. So
what's the book going to look like? What's the story with that?
So the cassette will come in like a library plastic like document shell, and there's a little slip in there for like booklets. So we're gonna have like a zine kind of inside with the essay.
And any artwork associated with that?
Well, I don't know. We have Christian Degan did the artwork for the album, and I think we'll use some more of his work because he's just such a great artist and illustrator. Like he's done some shirts for like Deaf Heaven and a few other like hardcore and metal bands and stuff. Like he's done some really great, a lot of black metal like borders and lettering. I'm gonna do a zine with him actually for Nakamata Editions. We're working on it right now, like landscapes. He's drawing these really creepy landscapes, and I was like, we should put these all together. They fit perfectly in a zine. Christian, I'll have him probably do some more, I think, because we really like his art. He's a really great artist.
That sounds great, man. And as usual, you guys always have some really cool ideas for packaging and making it like a full sensory experience, you know.
We try.
Yeah. Oh,
Try.
I appreciate
Especially
it,
like
for sure.
with the digital, it's like you need to make something that's like feels more like an experience or more like you know, I mean, especially, you know, I don't know, it's like we're in a time where you can do cool stuff, and I feel also like with my small label, like we don't make that many things, so it's not hard to hand cut or hand do things and make it a little bit more unique. Like where if you're making thousands of something, like, you know, like you can't hand do anything. That's just, you're gonna lose, your hands will be broken. You know, like it's really hard. But if you know, and it's hard to keep things consistent. And you know, when you can do like 50 or 100, that's like pretty realistic to kind of like do a few at a time and get them out the door as the orders come in. And you know, I think it's a little more doable.
That's awesome. And you know, thanks a lot, man. This is great. This is
Is it?
I am definitively saying that this is great. I enjoyed this podcast, and it was
we love talking to you, man. We love talking to you.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting, you know.
We went down many rabbit holes, so but it's okay.
Well, that's what it's all about, man. That's what
it's all about.
We can't wait to actually see Tombs play.
Yes. Great.
And hang out in person. Like, oh my gosh. Like it has to happen.
Well, you know, we're really itching to get out there and play, man. That's like I said, the set that we're doing right now is like all material that we've never performed live before. So
yeah,
it should be fun. And likewise, I'm interested to see when you guys come around too. I mean, I know things are picking up theoretically in New York, but you know, we'll see what happens. You know.
Yeah, we have like an entire record that we've written for Holy Circle.
Yeah.
We plan to record in October, and I think we figured out that only two of the songs, three of the.
Do we ever play live?
Three of the songs.
That's right.
On the full length, are songs that we've ever played live, and of course they've changed in the process of writing with our bandmates. So yeah, I mean, definitely would love the opportunity to perform those live. Mother of Sighs, I don't know. We've talked about, like, we're not even like totally sure.
I think we could do it live.
How to do it live, but I guess we have time to think about it.
Yeah.
I guess we've got time to figure it out.
I also feel like the bar be pretty high. We have to like make a cool live set or something like that was like visually, you know, like because it's just there's
a little bit more pressure on that
soundtracky kind of like visual sound thing, you know,
kind of step up our aesthetic a little bit with that one. It'll be, you know, I don't know, I know Locrian, we're looking at touring in 2022, so we'll see about that. I don't know. It's weird. Like our booking agent reached out to us about some dates, and we're like, okay, like stuff we could do. So we'll see.
It's definitely weird, man. When you don't have anything firm, like really going on, it's just like I can't even remember the last time like I've been home this long, you know, and not on tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were really consistently out there and on really cool packages and stuff too. So it's like, man, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
like what the be like. Like, hopefully it switches. People take, like you can at least get a few states together. Like maybe you're just in the Northeast for a while or something. It's like, it's I hope it changes soon and we can start. We can see the shows that are coming through and we can play some shows and stuff and it'll be a good experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you for taking time out and doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for talking to us, Mike. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.